I'm Danielle Stobbs and I'm the Programme Lead for Grief Support Services here at Pilgrims Hospice. So I oversee all the programming here, from our men's cooking group to our adult programming, right the way through to our children, teen and family programme. Being in grief work will always have stemmed from my own personal lived experience. The loss of my dad was catastrophic. It completely upended my life. Dad really was the centre of our world and our family, and even though I had my own children, it just really rocked the core of who I was and how I saw life and how I could function. And I found that nobody really talked about it, and I couldn't mask this grief. I couldn't live daily life without feeling depressed and lonely and isolated, and that nobody understood. And so I sought out anything that I possibly could, whether it was reading a book about grief, whether it was going to a grief circle, or listening to music that talked about grief. If I'm feeling like this, what are other people feeling like, and are they doing it alone, and where are there spaces where I fit? And I started to find those spaces where they were talking about grief in a way where it could be integrated into your life. I was really worried that if I accessed mental health support or counselling, that someone, if they took away my grief, they must be taking the love I had for my dad away, because I couldn't unweave these concepts. My grief was my love, and my love was my grief, and it was a very profound time. I found healing in bearing witness to someone else's grief. I found healing in other people witnessing my grief, navigating that with my own 3 children that were very young when my dad died, and listening to them and hearing how it looked different and how they integrated it differently. And that was what then propelled me to go back to university, and that's how I essentially became part of Pilgrims Hospice. There's an aspect in part of what we do in grief work where grief literacy is so important, because it helps people find language for how they're feeling, to help identify what emotions they have. But to be able to sit across the room and just listen to someone is always going to be more meaningful. And that's what I found. While the literacy part is so important, while having all the knowledge, and I could talk all day about grief, but I'm not the expert in the room on someone else's grief. I could be an expertise in what grief may look like. I might be an expert in finding resources or tools, but every time I'm in a group, I am across the room from somebody who is the expert in their own grief. And so I'm constantly learning. You cannot be in grief work, I don't think, without being so humbled every time you're across the table from someone and they tell me another way that grief looks for them, that they're telling me another perspective, another bird's eye view, another way that they loved or they grieved. I will always come out of every group of 6 people or 8 people learning 8 new ways that grief looked. I'm never the expert at the top of the table, always the learner. And that's, I think, important in grief. Children, teens and adults alike all move at their own pace. There's no timeline on grief. There's no one size fits all. And our curriculum is about giving you options to move through your grief at that pace, not this is how it needs to be done, and you've got to meet these markers or these 5 stages, and then you can wrap it in a bow, and good, you're done, well done, and you get a certificate at the end. I sometimes wish it was that simple, and it's just not. In all the groups, when I'm talking to facilitators or volunteers in particular, as much as we love our curriculum, we spend a lot of time researching, gleaning off of other organisations, looking at the ways that other curriculums are being run, especially in the grief space, but also just developmentally wise. While the curriculum is something I'm deeply proud of and what we do here, connection is always more important than curriculum. And if we're in a room where children, teens or adults are exploring their grief and an organic conversation comes up about their grief journey, about how they're feeling, I never want our facilitators or volunteers to rush somebody to get back to the curriculum. So always connection over curriculum. Curriculum is there to guide us through themes and knowledge and resources for them to explore what it is that they need, and empower our participants to find what it is that they need to integrate their grief into their life so that they can have more space for joy and peace and memory, and continuing that bond with their loved one, which is a huge theme in our curriculum is continuing bonds, that relationship isn't done because the person died. The person that's living will maintain a relationship with that person who has died for the rest of their life. And while the edges may soften over time, there'll be things that come that still are prickly, whether it's a death anniversary, a birthday, a family dinner where there's an empty place at the table. So connection is key to me, and that's always going to be my focus when I'm developing curriculum, is where are there going to be points where we can encourage peer connection. And because we're not counselling, we're not therapy, but we are group-based psychosocial support. So how can we encourage connection with peers? We don't assume that they're safe spaces. We call them brave spaces first. So we invite our participants into brave spaces, which they have to risk a little bit of their own vulnerability. It takes something of them to put out there first for us to start creating safe spaces where they can test the waters and go, okay, I'm safe here. Somebody else has heard what I'm saying. Somebody has listened. Somebody is not scared of my emotions, of my tears, of my meltdown. You know, everybody is welcome to come as they need to come. We have over 200 volunteers, and they are the backbone of what we do. You need manpower, and that's the reality of it. And we're very, very fortunate that we've got to a place where we have that ability. If I'm going to talk out of personal experience, when I was going through my own grief and I was trying to find spaces to fit, I just made my own space. I started grief circles, and I just invited people to come along. And I started small, and it wasn't about creating something that was needed to be big or fancy or have it all together. Grief just needs a witness. Grief just needs to be heard. People need to be seen and supported and held space for them to explore it themselves. So I would just say, as much as there's curriculum out there and you could create programming, start small. Start with connection. Start with being curious about what the gaps are in your community that you might be seeing. What could the community best use? Is there somebody already doing that? So you could maybe do something else. We've seen there's massive gaps in Edmonton for anticipatory grief support for children and teens. So this is something that we're deeply passionate about doing in the future. So now my wheels are turning about how can we seek connection for these children and teens in the anticipatory grief side. I found this analogy years ago, and we actually use it in one of our programs now, and it kind of explains where I feel like I have got to, even though I don't feel like healing is a destination, it's a lifelong journey. And it's a picture I saw on the internet, and I was quite scared about that idea of if I healed from my grief, that I thought that's what I was trying to do at the time, would I lose some love for my dad? And I saw this analogy of this grief ball in a jar, and the ball doesn't get smaller, but the jar can get bigger. The surroundings can grow around it. There can be more space around the ball. And for me, that felt comforting to know that no one was trying to shrink my grief. No one was trying to minimize it, dismiss my grief, or say, oh, you should be over it by now, or time heals all wounds, or that's the natural order of things for your dad to have died. All those things now weren't diminishing this idea that this grief ball meant something to me. It was the love I had, it was a relationship I had, it was the pain I had I will always feel the pain of my dad not being here. It will be woven throughout my entire life. It's part of who I am. But I have been in spaces where people have seen and heard who I am in my own grief journey, and that jar has got bigger, and there has been so many things that have bloomed out of this grief that I wish I had never learned this way, of course. I would trade it all for 5 minutes with my dad. But space has been made. I have been able to exhale after feeling like I took a breath when my dad died, and I just held my breath. I was in so much pain I couldn't imagine ever breathing again. And yet you do, and you don't have much of a choice, and space has been made. And so now to be in grief spaces, that has been the honor of my life. I can't imagine doing anything differently with my life. To walk through these doors every day and know that I have space in my life to see and hear other people in their grief while it also nurtures my own is huge. what a privilege. I just can't even believe I get to do it. So for me, where I'm at in my grief journey is that my grief ball is the exact same size as it was the day my dad died. But yet I have so much beauty. I call them uninvited lessons. I wish I never learned them this way, but I did nonetheless, and I'm so grateful that I have. And the people that I've met, the families that I've met, I have space to breathe. I have lessons I have learned, and deep gratitude that I get to live a life where grief and joy get to coexist. I don't have to choose.